That's a very nice question of you. The discussion here is about the release of Mr. Abdel Basit al-Megrahi and his trial and the whole case of Lockerbie. Okay, we have a man here who's saying that Abdel Basit al-Megrahi should be released, but we just wait for him to die in jail, we release him after he dies. Or maybe it's better, we just don't even release him after he dies, we just keep him a little bit longer after he dies until we find out if Libya was behind it or not. I mean, there is absolutely no way of discussing this logic. I mean, is the man guilty in the first place or not? Okay, he's being guilty. Has he been given due process of justice? No.
How can you tell when is Abdel Basit al-Megrahi going to die? That is just beyond belief to make this emotional argument that the man is dying, therefore you should let him go. He could live for another 3 years. I hope he does. And yet he had a golden chance to clear his name in the only way possible, and that is to go back to the same court and put the evidence, and then the court will clear him.
All right, you've made your point. I'm going to move on. I'm going to move on to a question in the third row. You, sir.
Hello, I'm Qatari. I want to know, is it fair that the Libyan bomber gets released and not the other prisoners?
Jim Swire, would you like to take that?
That's a very good question. There are a few other Libyan prisoners in Britain as well, and as things worked out, Mr. Megrahi had two possible ways of being returned to his own country. One was to use a new device, which was called the Prisoner Transfer Agreement, and that would have required him to withdraw his appeal. The other way was compassionate release. Now, the Americans, who have made a huge fuss about his release, are not quite to be taken at face value, because they agreed to an arrangement whereby, in the event of either of these two Libyans being found guilty, they would be imprisoned in Scotland under the control of Scottish law. And Scottish law, for many years, has included the possibility of compassionate release, and nearly everybody for whom compassionate release has been applied has obtained compassionate release. So Kenny McCaskill was acting to a precedent in Scottish law.
Okay, he wants to come back. Let's ask, you want to come back for a moment, say something, and then I'll come to Daniel Kawczynski.
Do you think the act that he did was a terrorist act?
I don't believe that he was involved in the Lockerbie disaster on the basis of the evidence that I've heard. And one of the most heartening things over the past few years since the trial ended has been that every jurist that I can think of who has examined the evidence in detail has come to the same conclusion. This very morning...
Okay, I'm going to ask Daniel Kawczynski to come here.
That's a very important question about the prisoners, the other prisoners. And the United Kingdom has spent a great deal of time working with Libya on the prisoner transfer agreement. And if Mr. Megrahi was to be released, I believe it should have been through this prisoner transfer agreement in exchange for progress being made to get the killer of PC Yvonne Fletcher. So it's not a question of holding hostages. It's not a question of holding hostages. It's a question of each country showing the other respect.
Okay, Jim Swire wants to come in here.
I'm a layman, I'm not a politician like you, but are you aware as a politician that Jack Straw, who is the English equivalent of Kenny McCaskill in Scotland,
he's a Justice Secretary.
A Justice Secretary for England, that he prevented the joint House of Commons and House of Lords committee, who were looking into prisoner transfer agreement, in respect to its implications for human rights, because it's an agreement which could allow the government to return prisoners to a country where they might expect to meet a dreadful end without their having to ask for the use of that agreement. And why did he not allow them to do this?
Well, you have to ask Jack Straw that, but the
agreement... Different party.
I mean, very important. This decision was taken with no consultation by parliamentarians, and this is partly why we are so frustrated, because the decision to transfer this prisoner had no sanction from our own parliament, and there was no scrutiny, and it's all behind the scenes deals between the Foreign Office and the Libyans, and that in a democracy should not be happening.
We're going to take a question from the gentleman in the second row.
I'm from Yemen, and I just wanted to ask Mr. Daniel. He was saying that we shouldn't release the bomber because Libya is not cooperative with other governments. So you're telling us that we shouldn't release him just because he's Libyan. And if he was from another nationality that his country is cooperative, he should have been released?
No, not at all. But there are as I tried to intimate at the beginning, very, very important outstanding issues. Libya, don't forget, we've just had the 25th anniversary of a major bombing of a hotel in Brighton where half of the government was nearly killed by the IRA. Libya supplied the IRA with Semtex for many, many years and was a leading supplier of ammunition and cash to a terrorist organization that were killing many British people. These things have to be resolved before we can have confidence in Libya and the Libyan regime. And nobody, sir, feels more passionately about improving relations with Libya than I do.